Hello everyone, this is Seshu Chira. Welcome all back to my channel. So today we are going to learn about money and credit, which is economics third chapter, money and credit. So in this chapter we will be discussing what is money, how the different forms of money is there, and at the same time we will also be checking how the self-help groups are being financed by the government and improving the lives of the people who are below poverty line. So let's start our chapter now. Money and credit. What is money? Money acts as an intermediate in the process to exchange, is called the medium of exchange. So here, money, as you can see on the screen, we all know and we all use money in our day-to-day lives. So money acts as an intermediate. In order to buy some product, we use money. So in many of our day-to-day transactions, the goods are being bought and sold with the use of money. The reason as why transactions are made in money is that a person holding money can easily exchange it for any commodity or service that he or she wants. So if you have money, you can buy any product. So it is acting as an exchange, as a medium through which you can buy some products. If you want to buy a particular watch, you want to buy a particular phone, you need to give money and you need to buy that particular product. In that way, money acts as a intermediate thing. Double coincidence of wants. What is double coincidence of wants? Before the establishment of money, there was a system called barter system where we exchange commodities. If I have wheat, I will exchange wheat for milk. So in this process, when I am exchanging wheat for milk, the person who is selling milk has to like or want wheat. Then only he will be taking wheat. So during that situation, it is called as double coincidence of wants. What we want, the same person who is having the commodity should also need the same product. Then only we can exchange in the barter system. This system was prevailing in the ancient period. So when in exchange both parties agree and sell by each other commodities, it is called double coincidence of wants. In the barter system, double coincidence of wants is essential. What are demand deposits in a bank? This is another form in which the people hold the money is a demand or a deposit within a bank. So when you have extra cash with you, you take that money and carefully deposit after opening an account on your name and keep the money safely in the bank. The bank accepts the deposits and pays certain amount of interest on the deposits. So these deposits, whatever money we have deposited, you can take that money back whenever you need. That is called on demand. So whenever you demand the money back from the bank will pay you back the money from your account what you have deposited. That's why these deposits are known as demand deposits in a bank. You can also issue checks to pay instead of sending them or withdrawing the money and paying the cash. The bank will pay directly to the person whom you want the cash to be paid. So demand deposits in a bank, they put their extra money in the bank. They open an account on the name of them and deposit the money there. The bank, once it accepts the deposits, it will ask them to deposit in their name only. And once you want the money back, whenever you demand the money back, automatically the bank will pay you back the money which is there in your account. We can also issue checks instead of giving cash. Now, what is a check? As you can see on the screen here at the bottom, right side bottom, you have to write the pay name for whom we have to pay the money, the date, then the name, then the amount, and give the amount in the letters. So that much amount will be paid to that particular individual whose name you have asked or whose name you have given there. So a check is nothing but a paper instructing the bank to pay a certain amount of money from the person's account to the person in whose name the check has been issued. Like that, check plays a very important role. You need not withdraw the cash from the bank. You can directly ask the bank to pay the money to your person or a friend or a relative or to anyone whom you have to pay the money by writing the name. Sometimes you can withdraw money for yourself. That is called self check. Instead of writing someone's name, you can write your name there, or you can write self and you can withdraw the cash. Instead of writing the slips, withdrawal slips, you can directly go and get through your check. Then Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India is a central bank that controls the entire monetary policy of the country. So the RBI of India supervises the activities of formal sector and keeps the track on their activities, but there is no one to supervise the functioning of informal sector. Now, what is formal sector and what is informal sector? Formal sector means all the banks which are working under the guidelines of the RBI all come under formal sector. Non-formal sector or informal sector means they all come under the money lenders in the villages, all the money which is transacted without a formal ledger or formal letters with them or formal functioning like a bank, going there, depositing, then withdrawing, where the system is completely absent, that is called as informal sector. So here the RBI regulates only the formal sector, not the informal sector activities. As you can see on the screen here, he is Mr. Shaktikant Das. He is the RBI governor of our country, the present RBI governor Shaktikant Das. And periodically, the bank has to submit information to RBI on how much they are lending, to whom they are lending, at what rate of interest they are lending. They give the details for the RBI bank. So basically, the Reserve Bank of India is a central bank of India which controls the entire monetary policy of the country. It only supervises the formal sector. It does not supervise the informal sector. Periodically, every bank has to submit the information to the RBI on how much they are lending and to whom, at what interest rate they are lending. These all details have to be submitted and it will be supervised by the RBI governor. Loan activities of a bank. Banks keep a small portion, is roughly 15% of the cash that is deposited with them in order to meet the day-to-day expenditures, or like give it back whenever the depositors demand. Then the rest is kept and given as loans. So majority of the deposits are extended to loans. There is a huge demand for loans for various economic activities. There is a great need for public for money. So the difference between what is charged from the borrower and what is paid to the depositor is the main source of income for banks. So loan activities, out of 100% of money what is deposited in a bank, 85% of the money will be sent for loan department and they extend loans for various economic activities. Why does a bank lend loans to different people? Because the rest of the 15% of the money, deposited money, which is deposited by public, so whenever they withdraw or they come to withdraw, bank should be in a position to give the money there. So they keep that 15% of the money with them. Now coming to the fundamental question, why should a bank give a loan, or what is the purpose of bank giving the public money as loan? See, for various activities, as you can see on the screen, like for housing or for buying a house or for doing any economic activity, any industry, any partnership, they avail loans. When they avail loans, bank will charge, let us say, 10% of interest on that. Let us say, for example. But for the money which is deposited, they give only 4% or 5% rate of interest. So the remaining 5%, what they are getting by giving loan to the outsiders, is a source of income for the bank. That extra 5% what they are getting, that will be the source of income for the banks. That is the reason why banks offer loans to the people for various economic activities. Two different credit situations. Let us observe two different credit situations here. Credit means it's a loan, refer to an agreement in which the lender supplies the borrower with money, goods, or services in return for the promise of the future payment. So if I have a credit card, I can take money, I can borrow some service, or I can buy some goods. I will pay back it after some time, maybe in a month or 2 months or 3 months. Festive season. In this case, first case, we can see here, Salim obtains credit to meet the working capital needs of production. The credit helps him to meet the ongoing expenses of production, the complete production on time, and thereby his earnings increase. So in this situation, credit helps him to increase earnings, and therefore person is better off than before. So here we are discussing about a business where Salim took credit and obtained the working capital and needs for production, and he completed all his work on time and is able to earn good income back. So he is able to take help of the credit and increase his income. This is the case with Salim. Now let us look at Sapna's case. Well, in the case of Swapna, the failure of the crop made loan repayment impossible, and she had to sell part of the land to repay the loan. So Swapna has taken loan for her farming activity. The crop failed, which means due to lack of rains, they were not able to produce well. So she could not repay the loan now. As she could not repay the loan, she has to sell a part of the land as a repayment for the loan. Now, credit, instead of helping Sapna, improving her earnings, made her worse off. This is an example of debt trap. How people fall into debt trap. This is a clear example. So, in this case, the borrower into a situation which recovery is very painful. So whether credit would be useful or not depends on the risk in the situation and whether there is some support in case of loss. So you have to consider both the cases and understand credit situations are different for different people. We need to look at the situation and we need to take the decision. You cannot decide that always credit will be profitable. Always credit will earn extra income. It can happen sometimes in the reverse also. Sometimes you may fall into the debt trap as well. So we need to be very, very careful while we are taking or availing any kind of credit. Terms of credit. Every loan has an agreement which specifies an interest rate which the borrower must pay back to the lender. So along with that, there will be a repayment of the principal amount. In addition, lenders also need to keep collateral, means security against the loans. So if you are taking a loan, there will be an agreement in which it has the details of the principal amount, the rate of interest, the security or collateral that you are putting for your loan amount. Collateral is an asset which we put by the borrower, such as land, building, vehicle, livestock, and uses that as a guarantee to the lender until the loan is repaid. Once you finish this repayment of the loan, then they return back the collateral, the documents, or anything. In case if you fail to repay the loan, the lender will have the right to sell the assets of the collateral or to obtain payment by issuing them in the open market. So the interest rate, collateral, documentation, requirements, and the mode of payment together is called the terms of credit. What are called as terms of credit? Rate of interest, mode of payment, collateral, and the other entire documentation work together is called terms of credit. And this may vary depending on the nature of the money lender and the borrower. Formal sector in India. So cheap and affordable credit is crucial for a country's development. There are various types of loans. First type of loan is formal sector loan. Second type of loan is informal sector loan. In the formal sector loan, these are the loans from banks and the cooperatives. The Reserve Bank of India supervises the functioning of the formal sources of loans, as we learned before. So banks have to submit the information to the RBI on how much they are lending, to whom, and at what interest rate they are lending. So RBI issues the guidelines for issuing of the loans and also asks them to maintain the data and submit the report annually to the RBI for scrutiny. When it comes to the informal sector of loans, there are loans from money lenders, traders, employers, relatives, and friends. There is no organization who supervises these credit activities. That's why it is called informal activity or informal credit activities. There is no one to stop them from using unfair means to get their money back. We have seen many cases that the online apps are issuing money and they are targeting the people, those who fail to repay the loan back, and they are charging very high rate of interest. There are even some cases which are heard that they have committed suicide because they all come under informal sector. There is no organization to supervise the credit activities, so we cannot stop them from using unfair means to get their money back. So these are the two different types of loan sectors which are available in India. And moving on, formal and informal credit. The formal sector meets only about half of the total credit system what we have in the rural India. The remaining credit in the entire country is running on informal credit only. The formal credit is distributed more equally so that the poor can benefit and avail the cheaper loans, but it is necessary for a bank and the cooperatives to increase the lending capacity, particularly in the rural areas, and the dependence on the informal sector of the credit sources reduces. So while the formal sector loans need to expand, it is also necessary that everyone receives these formal sector loans, because in our country most of the loans are from the informal sector only. More than half of the loans which the farmers borrow or the daily wage labor borrow is from the informal sources only, not from the formal banking sector. So they need to increase the loaning capacity, lending capacity. At the same time, they need to give for all the farmers who have very less land, even without a collateral. They need to extend this loans to the farmers. Then only they will not go for the informal credit sources. Self-help groups. What are self-help groups? The poor people still depend on informal sources of credit. So obviously we know they are not regulated by anybody. They charge very high rate of interest. So here banks are not present everywhere in the rural India. Even if banks are present, will they give loans for the poor people who don't have any properties? No. Banks will only give loans when they have paper documentation correctly done and as collateral, something as security. So to overcome these problems, the terms of credit problems, people have created self-help groups known as SHGs. These are small groups of people who will promote small savings among their members. They promote small savings among their members. A typical self-help group contains 15 to 20 members usually. They belong to a neighborhood and who meet and save certain amount regularly. So self-help groups are formed to help the poor people and to avoid the problems what they face when they go to take a loan from a bank. If we have to borrow a loan from a bank, we need to submit certain set of documents and also compulsorily we need to give them a collateral, a guarantee for our money. But if a poor person has some land or some property, why would he go for a loan amount? In order to avoid this, they started to create self-help groups where 15 to 20 members in the neighborhood become a group and then they save certain amount of money. So what are the advantages of self-help group? It helps the borrowers to overcome the problem of lack of collateral. As I mentioned earlier, the purpose of the creation of the self-help groups is to eliminate the terms of credit in the banking system, especially in the poor people's segment or the below poverty line people. So here the first advantage is they eliminate the problem of lack of collateral. People can get timely loan for a variety of purposes at a reasonable interest rate. So banks give loan at very less rate of interest when compared to the informal sector. Self-help groups are the building blocks of the organization of the rural poor. It helps the women to become financially self-reliant. As you can see on the screen here, they're using the waste newspapers and they're making some designs, some kites, and they are being trained here so they can do some kind of work. They regularly meet and have a platform to discuss and act on a variety of social issues as well, like health, nutrition, domestic violence, etc. So the advantages of self-help groups are: first, there will not be any problem of collateral. Second, they can receive more loans. Third, it is a building block or an organization of the rural poor. Four, it helps people to become financially self-reliant, and regularly meeting the group provides a platform to discuss and act on variety of social issues such as health, nutrition, domestic violence, etc. It will make them socially aware and financially independent. Any uneducated woman also can learn something because they are trained here, as you can see on the screen, and be a part of a team, and together they can earn some income by borrowing a loan from the bank for their working capital. So in this chapter, we learned about money, what is money, how important it is, then what is double coincidence of wants, demand deposits in a bank, a check, RBI, What is the role of the RBI in looking after the banks? Who supervises the bank and monetary policy in our country? Loan activities of banks. Two different credit situations. We have discussed the case studies. One is Salim's, the other one is Swapna's. Terms of credit. What are terms of credit? Formal sector credit and informal sector credit system in India. What is the role of the formal and informal sector? Self-help groups and the advantages of the self-help groups. That's all we have in this video. Hope you all understood the concept. Thank you.